The views expressed are not those of local community broadcasting, WYML LP, or its management, volunteers, or underwriters. Greetings and welcome to the Personal Safety Show. This is Marcus Melnick from Firearm Mentor and Stress to Logic, your host. Today I have Nick Greco from C3, among other things, joining the show. Very interesting guy. Nick, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Marcus.
I met Nick at the Midwest Security and Police Conference and Expo. He was on the showroom floor. I had just finished giving my presentation, and I was going around seeing, what kind of new stuff's out there? Who can I interview? Who can I be on the show? And I met this guy, Nick. Holy Moses. I thought I had alphabet soup after my name. He's got like 2 alphabets after his name. I'm a rookie compared to him. So, Nick, can you cover what do all these credentials and alphabet soup, what do they mean, and how did you get them?
Essentially, I have a master's degree in psychology, but then I went ahead and pursued other things over the course of my career, which is spanning 25 years plus now. The American Academy of Experts in Traumatic Stress is what I'm involved with. So I'm a fellow of the American Academy of Experts in Traumatic Stress. I also have a certification in acute traumatic stress management as a board certified expert in traumatic stress. So essentially, I always like to tell people $5 gets me a coffee and a donut somewhere along with this stuff. You know, it's just, I don't really stand on ceremony with it. I know more than the average bear, I guess, but it's not something I kind of make a big thing of. And I'm like, just call me Nick, and however I can help you, I help you.
I appreciate your humbleness, but it's not warranted. You are freaking awesome. So I'd love to know what is a board certified expert, and how is this a class you take, several courses? How do you get to be board certified?
Well, through the American Academy of Experts in Traumatic Stress. I don't know if they changed it, but when I did it, they had you go through, list your credentials, list your experience, and then also take kind of a course and do a test. So that's how I did it. Most of your kind of board certifications are similar to that. One of the things that I have been involved in since around 1999 was post-traumatic stress disorder. So it was just something that kind of evolved for me so much to get a little bit more training along that route.
You're also a certified CIT coordinator with CIT International. Can you explain what this is and what is the Memphis model?
So let's start with the Memphis model first, because that's how CIT International is going to evolve from there. So in 1987, there was an incident involving the Memphis Police Department in which an individual with mental illness was shot and killed. At that time, the mayor of Memphis, numerous organizations, the Memphis Police Department got together and said, okay, we have to do something about this. And Major Cochran was he's one of the co-creators of the Memphis model. And essentially is when we talk about crisis intervention, team training, or CIT, the Memphis model is what a majority of organizations across the country use, or they base it off of their CIT, their 40-hour CIT for officers to go through. The one thing that people tend to forget is that CIT is not just a police training. It is actually a model to involve the community, to involve judges, lawyers, attorneys. It is the community working together to divert individuals who have mental health needs outside jail. And yes, when police respond to these cases, we want to have them end safely. But what do we do with these individuals when they need further mental health care? And one of the things we need to do is have inpatient hospitals, crisis stabilization units. We need to have outpatient treatment centers. We need to have mental health court. We need to have drug abuse court. We need to have veterans court. All these types of things. It's called the sequential intercept model. It means the community and everybody's working together, not everything falls upon the police, because essentially mental health care in the United States has never really been the greatest. And right now we're at a situation in which sometimes we don't have a place to bring people And that's akin to if you had a heart attack, we did CPR, but then there's no advanced cardiac care unit for you. There's no ER. That's kind of where we're at with mental health. If we look at Wisconsin, in Kenosha County, there's no inpatient psychiatric center. In Lake County, we have one psychiatric center, one hospital for 750,000 people. DuPage has 2 to 3, maybe 4 places. So it's very hard to find places to bring people. So that's where crisis stabilization or community mental health centers come in, and those are also very difficult because of funding issues. It's one of the first things that gets cut is funding for mental health. So in terms of, going back to your question about CIT International, so after the Memphis model starts in 1988, it takes roughly about 12 to 16 years for other states to slowly jump on the bandwagon. So in Illinois comes around 2003. A lot of states are celebrating 21-year anniversaries right now. The CIT International is, I don't want to say a governing body, but they do set the standards. And if you're trying to start a CIT program, it would be in your best interest to go and model your program after the Memphis model. With that being said, CIT International covers a huge gamut of things, and one of which is training and then certification for coordinators. So I have been a certified coordinator for a number of years. I just went through my research. And what that is, it's ensuring that those who coordinate CIT are meeting the Memphis model, are hitting a certain standard. You go through your tests. In a lot of organizations, like in Wisconsin, where I'm a coordinator for their CIT, CIP, and advanced CIT, that's a requirement to become a certified CIT team. That was a requirement I went through. And so it is something that if you have a CIT program, you want to not only follow the Memphis model, but also encourage or have your coordinators go through that particular training.
This is quite interesting. So when I worked in law enforcement, and I left law enforcement, at least municipal law enforcement, in 2014, so 10 years ago, had police officers responding to situations that definitely required a social worker. And then once the police officer got there, if they determined it was a domestic, it was a child abuse thing, then they would call out the social worker. Today, many departments are dispatching a social worker with the police before the police even know what's going on. And it's a quicker access to mental health. Was that an outgrowth of this Memphis model?
It's an outgrowth of the Memphis model. And like I tell everybody, CIT is something that does not exist in a vacuum. So yes, you are constantly wanting to evolve your program to meet the needs of your community. When we have CIT trained officers, if that's all we have, that's great. But if we have a CIT trained officer along with a social worker or another mental health professional as a co-responder model, that's kind of the 1-2 punch in terms of having the safety and security of having an officer there, having the social worker or other mental health professional there in their zone, having the ability to do what? To go ahead and deal with that situation right then and there. And also probably have a multitude of resources, more so than a police officer who's pulled in many different directions. With that in mind, I know a lot of organizations are going toward no police response, which I find a little concerning, that you would want to do something where it is going into somebody's house or going into an unknown event, because oftentimes these are not necessarily cases that we can say, oh yeah, this is going to be a run in the mill. There's no simple calls, and to assume that, oh, it's, we can just send a social worker there, it'll be okay. There's a lot of variables. So I'm all for meeting in the middle with the co-responder model.
I agree with that. There's certainly a safety aspect that you really need a police officer there, at least until the scene is secure and you understand that people aren't going to possibly be violent or continue to be violent.
The fire department's not going to go into the scene is safe and secure. Why would we send a social worker to do the same thing?
100%.
And sometimes you have, these are domestics sometimes. They can be very complicated if there's other family members around.
And this is kind of not in the questions that I gave you, so I don't mean to put you on the spot, but it popped in my head. How does HIPAA factor into all of this?
How so?
Well, there's this, your medical records are your medical records, and people that need to see them can see them in the medical profession, but they're considered private. So how does someone in the Memphis model have some sort of continuity of care? Perhaps a social worker goes to a home, or the CIT trained officer, and then next time the same thing happens, but it's a different officer. How does that documentation transfer so the patient can get the services that they need?
So when we're looking at this, we have the CAD system and things people can log in. You're looking at the call for service and what happened with the call for service. Okay, so the person, we got there, they refused service, they didn't want to go to the hospital. They said everything was okay, or we took them to the hospital. When you call 911 and you're asking for service, that's not it's not possibly falling under HIPAA in that particular situation, because it's not a medical record. Those are public records. You can get a 911 call. Those are all recorded as 911. Those are public records. If you're looking at saying, okay, what happened afterwards and all the follow-up, the officers aren't privy to that. And in terms of continuity of care, the person would not be doing continuity of care. This is to get the person through the crisis.
Okay.
To get them into the hospital or into a crisis stabilization unit, and that's where they do the follow-up. And no, we don't have the closure with that until the next time. Or say, you bring the person to the ER and then they release them a few hours later, then you're dealing with them again. That particular situation is not like a HIPAA thing. Now, there are agencies that are following up with people after there's been a call for service. That's actually a number of things where you have, like in the Lake County Sheriff's Office, they have the COAST program. And in the COAST program, if the sheriff has responded to a need for service, they will go and follow up with them a week or two, or depend on how the situation turned out, they'll follow up with them after the event and sometimes be able to fast track them into county mental health services. So that's another way to stop the kind of repetitive nature of, calling 911 each and every time. Well, maybe we can get this person fast tracked into mental health treatment rather than another 5 or 6 calls for the sheriff to come and deal with an individual. So that going ahead and looking and making sure that we set this person up for some continuity of care.
Terrific. So one other credential, and then I'll get into some other questions I want to ask you about, is you are the group chair for editorial review for psychology and medical legal issues for Duty. I said Duty Publishing.
I know.
I have a very juvenile sense of humor, and the people who listen know. So what is Duty Publishing, and what's your role there? What exactly do you do?
I've been the editorial review group chair since 2001. So I have a series of reviewers that review books every month, and I'm amazed at how many books people publish every month in psychology and medical legal issues. It's part of a review service, so these books that come out are some of the most prolific books on psychology and very cutting edge, and we review them, myself included. Thankfully, I have a great group of reviewers that review books monthly. They put out about 350 word review, and they give this to the libraries and institutions. And this book review service is very vital because with the amount of books, the barrage of books that come out every month, it helps to have this review service be able to say, okay, this book is worth your time. This book is okay. This book is terrific, etc. So that is, in a nutshell, kind of what Duty Publishing does. And that's a pure academic, non-paid position. It's just one of those things where it's done for kind of the love of keeping up with the state of the art, etc.
Let's get into your company. What is C3 Education?
So C3 Education Research, what we do, and we do a lot of law enforcement training, first and foremost, but we do fire and EMS, and we have fire and EMS come through some of our CIT courses up in Wisconsin. What makes C3 unique is that we talk about providing a customized and unique consulting experience for law enforcement agencies, emergency service providers, groups and individuals. So I do train civilians as well. And C3, there's 3 C's. It's consult, collaborate, and communicate. And one of the things that's so important is a needs assessment. So we look at what your organization, your agency needs, and we don't take stuff off the shelf. Yes, there's things that, okay, if you're going to talk about mental illness, you have certain things you're going to cover, but what are factors that you're dealing with in your department? Are you dealing with more autism? You're dealing with more bipolar disorder? So we want to have the skeleton, have the shell, but then build upon that. Another popular course is sexual harassment discrimination training for law enforcement officers. So we incorporate the general orders, whatever standard operating procedures you have, and incorporate that into our training. And so each and every time we do that in the agency, it looks a little bit different because we're matching that up and covering all the aspects that are unique to your agency. So we do a lot of things. The CIT training is one thing, the wellness training programs, various workshops. We have people that are very much interested in suicide prevention and officer wellness. So we're doing more of those this year and next year. And so it is a great opportunity to really give back to both the law enforcement, first responders, and civilians. And that customization really sets us apart from a lot of other organizations. And I have access to other trainers as well that work with me because of that. That provide a well-rounded amount of knowledge and training. I have my team members with psychiatry and psychology, addictions, human services backgrounds. And that makes for a huge difference. Because a lot of times you may have people that go ahead and do training and they're just regurgitating. We don't regurgitate. We have examples. We have cases. We have things that we bring. If I go in and do a talk on post-traumatic stress disorder for anyone that's doing pension board review, because they want to know about what is PTSD, what isn't PTSD, how do we make determinations. We have like a whole suite of training programs, and if it's not on our list, we can usually customize something to fit the needs.
I absolutely love what you just said, and I'll get on my soapbox. The listeners know this. I'm a firearms instructor in Illinois, and I do very much the same thing. I cater my classes to the needs of the students, and I've seen materials from other instructors. Hey, here's a printout of all the places you can't carry a firearm. And the thing is 11 years old, and there's been 4 or 5 legal updates since then, and there's no updating of the material. So I absolutely love it that you guys are cutting edge, finger on the pulse.
Well, one of the things you brought up with a firearm instructor, having had to go through my recertification this year, I'm hearing from the instructors, the state is starting to crack down on people who are just rubber stamping stuff. So word to the wise, it's, you got to put people through that training.
There's over 10,000 police agencies in the United States, and they range from
18,000.
Thank you. I was going to say 13, but I did it over 10 so I wouldn't be incorrect. They go from a one-person department to departments like Chicago that have 12,000 officers. What size agencies do you typically deliver training at?
Small, medium, and large. I am a CIT instructor for Chicago Police Department. I work with organizations in Illinois as a CIT instructor, the mobile training units. Then I also work with agencies, wide range, out in Walworth and Kenosha County in Wisconsin as a CIT coordinator. And so I get people from all disciplines. We're starting to get more federal VA officers in some of our trainings now. Really varies. So the small agencies are fun to work with, the mid-size, the large. Each one has their own specific needs, and that's where you can't just take something off the shelf. You have to customize it, because what works in Chicago is not going to work for a suburb.
I want to segue to conferences, and the first question I have is a curiosity question. Are you going to be at the Illinois State NAMI conference next month?
I don't think so, because my schedule is pretty packed. When is that conference anyway?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think it's the third Friday and Saturday in October.
Yeah, that's definitely not going to work.
Okay, I'm speaking there. That's why I just was curious. What conferences do you typically attend? I know ILETA, we talked about that. You remember?
Right. ILETA, yes. CIT International. They just had that in August in Indianapolis. That was really great. There are LATOA, which is a Wisconsin Law Enforcement Trainers Association. Unless I'm a keynote speaker or actually speaking, and if I don't necessarily attend just to attend, I'm selective. Those are kind of like the major ones that I go to. I'm sorry. I should say the Hunter Club. The Frontline 100 Club. Last 2 years, they've had it for 2 years. They're going to be doing it next year as well. So 23, 24, and then 25 will be the third year doing it. So I'm planning to go to that. I've submitted also a presentation, and I usually have a table for C3 there as well.
Terrific. How do you understand Mark? I'm just kidding. I already interviewed him. His episode aired. Great guy. Oh, thank you for the introduction.
The Boston accent, you need subtitles under it.
Yeah.
No, it's pretty good. It's I understand him. If he talks a little fast, then I'm like, wait, what did you say? So.
Exactly. He's got a lot of thoughts to share, and I absolutely love the guy. He's just thank you. I'm honored that you were able to introduce me to him, and we hit it off. We are of like mind. It was fantastic. We had some banter going back and forth.
If somebody doesn't like Mark, something's wrong with them, because Mark is very likable.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Mark is a real likable guy.
Absolutely. Yeah. So what final thoughts can you share regarding advances in law enforcement psychology, training, or maybe talk about something that I didn't ask because I didn't know to ask?
There's a lot. This is, you've opened up a Pandora box with that question, because the training in law enforcement is constantly evolving. I hear a lot of people talking about AI stuff. I'm not enamored by AI because there's a number of reasons. I think this is still something that you have to deal with at a human level, because you're dealing with human beings. There's no shortcuts to good training, especially in law enforcement. When we talk about training, big concern is, what are we seeing in the academies? How far are we lowering the bar? How far are we going to lower the bar? Because a problem in the academy is eventually possibly going to be a problem in the field, and then it doesn't hurt. It doesn't help the profession. So I think we still have to have the stringent standards and not shirk those. You really don't want to be cutting corners when it comes to individuals. We've had in this year alone 3 cases. Somebody going from 6 departments in 4 years. Ooh. And then you had that downstate, and that was the person that was had the downstate. He shot the individual. Start pushing people through, and when we start looking the other way, that's going to eventually impact. So, in terms of training, I think you have to have budgets for training, and I know it sounds trite, right? But you have to have line items, not only for your training, but for your wellness programs. Say, we got to have this, this, and this, and it's unfunded, you're not going to get to it. It's not going to happen. You can have training that meets the needs of your organization, and it can be done in an affordable way. And that's what, when we talk about C3, education and research, that's what we do. We have long-term relationships with company or with agencies, and also companies for that matter, because we're not looking to come in and do a one-time only and see you kind of thing. We're there to create a training program, to create a resource for you that you can utilize. Like, I've had places come to me 4 years later and say, hey, you need to come back and do some more training. We have new people. And we do that. That's the type of stuff that when you're looking for training and vetting your people, look at who is training your people. Is it somebody that's got a crash course, somebody that's, just pulling something off the shelf, or is it truly somebody who has their finger on the pulse of law enforcement training, first responder training? Is it a person who's going to craft things into your needs, not to their needs? See, my motto is this: I work with you, I don't work for you. So I'm going to recommend things. I'm working with you to develop something. So I'm not going to say, we want to do it this way. Well, it's like, yes, you can do it that way, but I want to make you aware that there's a better method for this, or let's look at the other side of this. And then we figure a way to meet exactly what they need. One of the things that's very frustrating is the state of officer wellness. And the big concern is that everyone talks about it, but does nothing about it. Everyone knows about the numbers of suicides in law enforcement. And we don't do enough about it. The first wellness programs started it about 49 years ago in 1975. They started taking off in 1980. But here we are, new chiefs, old chiefs, whatever. People come and go. There's no succession plan, and these programs go away. And then 5 years later, somebody says, oh, we need a wellness program, and let's go ahead and do it. And it seems like it's all brand new, and they're always reinventing the wheel and always starting from square one. We know we've had these issues, and yet we keep spinning wheels like a hamster.
Can you share your website, your contact information in case anyone would like to ask you questions, hire you,
Sure.
Get in contact with you?
If people go to www.c3educationresearch.com, that is the way to reach out. There's contacts there, but www.c3educationresearch.com would be the place to go. And then if people are interested in protecting the Guardian, that, of course, is protectingtheguardian.com for our wellness and suicide prevention. We're basically create, promote, and maintain the health and wellness of law enforcement officers. So I said Protecting the Guardian.
Nick Greco, thank you very much for appearing on the show and sharing your expertise with all of our listeners. It was an absolute pleasure.
Thank you. It was great to meet you. Thank you for having me on your show. Really appreciate the opportunity and look forward to keeping in touch with you.
We have monthly concealed carry license CCL classes in the northwest suburbs of Chicago. Dates can be seen at firearmmentor.com/classes. If you have a question, we can be reached at www.firearmmentorcard.com. That is our electronic business card, has all of our contact information and links in it. It's the easiest way to get a hold of us. Until next time, stay safe out there, and I'll see you at the shooting range. This is Marcus Melnick from Firearm Mentor signing off. The views expressed are not those of local community broadcasting, WYML LP, or its management, volunteers, or underwriters.